Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another community show. My name is Chris Detzel, and I'm the Director of Customer Community and Engagement. We have our topic today, which is moving data in and out of Reltio. It's super easy. Ian and Ansh will show you how easy it is. Ansh Kanwar, he's the VP of Product Management. I don't know that he's done a show as of yet, so I'm excited to have him on. And of course, Ansh, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. I knew you did this to me on purpose. And then Ian Basu, Senior Director of Product. He's been on. He's done some Reltio Integration Hub shows, so certainly excited to have him on here on the show again. So the way this works, and it's just a normal thing, so please keep yourself on mute. All questions are should be asked in the chat, and feel free to take yourself off mute as well and ask the question. The show will be recorded. My hope is to have this out probably not today, but by Monday or so on the community. Now, today's show is very exciting. I know there's a lot of people interested in that, so that's today. We do have our CCAB Lunch and Learn session that is continuing. It continues on. I think they do this every month. If you're interested in coming to that specifically, our docs team really needs help from our customers and partners to really just make rich documentation and things like that. So we just get help from a small group there. And then I know everybody's excited about machine learning based matching. That's next week. And then also next week is Reltio Integration Hub with Sajid Sayed at Vara. Really excited about that. And then two more that have been added, one in August, late August, on Reltio Integration Hub around workflows. Workflows is just a super hot topic and always has been. And then one I'm really excited about that is a little bit different, but it's in September 29th. Megan is actually going to run that, but it's called Blazing Trails in Master Data Management, Stories from Women Succeeding in Master Data Management. That's a little bit later, but it's really exciting for that particular show. That's all I have, Ian. I'm going to stop sharing and let you go.
Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, Ansh, go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. I head up product management for our platform and infrastructure, and also play the role of chief prankster and troublemaker. So
yeah, that's for sure.
I'm happy to be here and hopefully one of many community shows that we'll be able to host in the near future. Ian, why don't you bring up the slides? So Ian doesn't know that yet, but I hope he's going to switch the slides around. And what I wanted to start with, is our featured speaker, Ian himself.
Loves to cook.
I'd love to hear your story. Maybe give us a couple minutes, 5 minutes of your background. You know, the role you play for us here at Reltio. And I'm really curious about this LinkedIn post. So let's get to the bottom of what's going on here.
Awesome. So Ansh was not joking when he said he was chief troublemaker. So yeah, I've been at Reltio almost a year now, and I lead our product integration strategy, specifically around data moving in and out. And so we'll dive into a lot of that here in this session. But this video as part of, and actually this should be, I don't know, is this a screenshot, Ansh?
It's straight from LinkedIn this morning.
Okay. So this video is...
Oh, sorry, it's not, I didn't do the whole video, but provide a link, yeah.
Okay, the video that I posted on LinkedIn a couple months ago, this is around our Reltio Integration Hub product. And if some of you might be familiar with what it is, and there's a concept called recipes in the product, because a recipe is a workflow that you create to build these integrations. And so what I did, this was a quick 30-second clip on LinkedIn. Yeah, you can see it if you haven't checked it out. I did a play on recipes by pretending to cook and comparing cooking to building recipes in the product and comparing the simplicity. And the reality is it is simple to create the recipes on this product. But if you look at the comment section of the video, there were a lot of heated comments that I actually was not cooking. It was an empty pan. So in my next cooking series video, I will really cook a recipe, actual food on the pan. So you'll be able to see that. But yeah, it's just making light of the fact that building recipes on the integration hub in our product is really simple, really easy, similar to cooking food. And so there's a lot more to come. So just stay tuned for what happens there.
And I think for me, it's also about creativity, right? That's the parallel that you can really get creative with Integration Hub and build things to your taste. All right, we stretched that analogy enough. Let me put you on the hot seat next, Ian.
Yeah.
So let's start with this. Why do MDM systems have this reputation for being like really hard to interface with? Like, why? And what are you doing about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me stop my screen share for a bit. Yeah, so what's happened historically with MDM, master data management in the industry, is it's been one of those things where it's all or nothing, right? So we have lots of companies trying to solve this data problem. And the thinking has been, let me go in there, you know, I'm say another company that's built an MDM software and help you fix your data problem end to end. So getting data from everywhere in the enterprise, fixing that from ground up, literally boiling the ocean when it comes to data. At Reltio, we're doing things a little bit differently in the sense that we are a cloud-native SaaS platform from ground up, and we're looking to solve the problem in a much more real-time operational performant manner. So there's, you know, our thinking is it's an API-first solution. That's how we do things at Reltio. And we've built a lot of capabilities around that API to make data going into Reltio or out of Reltio much simpler and easier. So we're changing the game when it comes to solving data problems for our customers. And we just talked about Reltio Integration Hub. So it's solving data problems in a much easier and simpler fashion than anyone else does it. So that's what helps us stand out from our competitors. It's that ease of use, that flexibility, and introducing things like the Reltio Integration Hub, this Swiss Army knife of capabilities, an iPaaS solution that's integrated. It's all of these different things that are coming together that's helping our customers solve their data problems in a simple and more efficient manner.
But Integration Hub is not the only option, right? There's a variety of options. You wanna just touch on that spectrum a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. You're 100% right. There's a lot of different options, and so with that in mind, I do have a couple of slides that I want to put up, just to give you a visual as I'm speaking to answering that question, essentially. So just a bit more context setting here, right? The data problem that we just touched on, the application problem along with it. This is the reality of what everybody's going through, which is the exponential increase in proliferation of data and applications. And Reltio is in that sweet spot of being the real-time OS of data. So I talked about us looking at this differently, being API first, and we're squarely in the middle of helping our customers solve this data problem in an efficient fashion. And there's a lot of ways to do it. And so we are ultimately helping our customers to accelerate growth, increase efficiency, minimize risk, things that enterprises, companies across the world care about. And this is the real business value that we're driving with our solution. So let me just jump over to this. This is a slide that highlights all the ways that we make it easy for our customers to get data into the platform and get data out of the platform. And Reltio Integration Hub is certainly a part of it. So if you see on the bottom part of the diagram, it's ideally suited for integrating to other applications, synchronizing data across applications. It's you can use it for data extraction, data loading to a certain extent. But then besides that, we have a lot of other capabilities to get data into and out of Reltio, including APIs, including data loader, pre-built connectors, event streaming queues. And so this diagram, there's a lot to it. But just to start off, to kick off this conversation, to answer your question on that, these are all of the various ways that you can get data into Reltio and out of Reltio.
Right. And again, in the hot seat, right? This is a lot of choices. So we got to help our customers sort of sort through these. And that's the purpose really of this conversation, right? The right tool for the job. The good news is that we have a number of tools, and we want to be clear and concise about when to use which tool to get to the best business value that all of you are trying to drive for your departments or your companies. But let's step back a little bit. So when you think about data movement, you're thinking more about loading, right? What's your mental model, right? How are you thinking about different parts of the product?
Yeah, great question. So data loading is one of the first things that any of our customers would do. They have, whether it's files of data sitting in sources, in various applications. And so as you can see on the left-hand side of this diagram, that is focused on data loading. And the couple areas that I want to call out is you have the option of loading data using our purpose-built data loader product, which is inside Reltio. It's on the console, it's UI interface, simple, easy to use. That would be your preferred method of loading data if it's, say, in a file with formatted data in the file, there's no specific transformations that are required. That's when you would use the data loader product. But let's say you have something that's a little bit more complicated. In that sense, you could integrate using Reltio APIs if you wanted to load data. There's event streaming ingestion, and we can get into more details around that. So that's another option. Besides that, there's pre-built connectors. So we have purpose-built connectors, whether it's Salesforce or otherwise, that can help you get data from Salesforce within to Reltio, or Reltio Integration Hub is your Swiss Army knife, as I mentioned, that gives you additional flexibility to load data if you need some transformations, some specific logic, some data quality checks, if you will, to get data into Reltio. So that's really kind of honing in on that flexibility aspect of what we provide to our customers.
Right, and that's just the inbound side, right, or the east side, as we talk about it, right?
That's right.
Right. Well, what about the other aspects of exporting data or really the enrichment of data that is already in the system?
Yeah. So once you get the data into Reltio, so the circular piece here and the visual, that's where all of the matching, merging, and the Reltio magic happens. But that's not where it ends, because our customers do want that data to be enriched from different third-party data sources. So for that specific reason for enriching data, we have pre-built out-of-the-box connectors. We have Dun & Bradstreet, we have Bureau Van Dyke, and there's additional ways of enriching data, which we'll talk about. But those are purpose-built, pre-built, just to make it easier to enrich data with a click of a button, simple integrations into Reltio. And then on the export side, we've also have a variety of ways to get data out of Reltio, whether it's an export service, event streaming using queues, purpose-built analytics connectors, or even Reltio Integration Hub. So that's the variety of different ways you can get data out of Reltio. So that's kind of your complete picture of data moving in, data moving out, or enriching data within Reltio.
That's great. Well, yeah, I mean, just can you give me an idea of the scale here, right? How much data do you move in and out of the way I think about it, it really is about the API layer around the core, right? That is the lowest common denominator. And then all of these capabilities or conveniences essentially built around those APIs. So do you have any stats to throw around?
Yeah, absolutely. So Reltio being a cloud-native SaaS platform, the appeal to our customers, as you mentioned, Ansh, is this real-time operational performance, the scalability, the ability to auto-scale as more and more data is coming through and volumes coming through. So, and that really, that's the beauty of the cloud, right? You don't have to restrict yourself in terms of how much data you want to process. So to give you an indication, and Reltio is a fast-growing company. We've been in business about 10 years. Lots of customers getting added month over month. I looked at the data as of yesterday. Last 12 months, our customers have made over 40 billion API calls. That's billion with a B, so it's a huge number, right? And on a daily basis, on average, at least 100 million API calls are being made. And so this is happening 24/7 around the clock. So that just gives you a sense of how our customers are hitting our system and getting data in and out of Reltio. So, and this is just where we are today. You can imagine a year from now what that number might look like as more and more customers start to use Reltio.
Guys, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
With a couple more questions. Will this replace the OCE Salesforce connector?
Is the question, is Reltio Integration Hub going to replace the Salesforce connector?
Gene, can you elaborate a little bit? Or just put that in the chat and I'll just ask the next question.
Yeah. That's the idea. And what is the status of the current Salesforce connector? Where are we going with that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So let me just throw another slide up here just to kind of explain the answer to that question. So the short answer to that question is the Salesforce connector is a first-class citizen for us. We have continued investment. We're continually supporting it, so it's not going away. And what you're seeing on the slide here is the capabilities and how to think about the Salesforce connector as a product. It is something that's continually upgraded, managed by us. It's on the App Exchange, the Salesforce App Exchange, the managed package. And because this is pre-built and purpose-built for Salesforce, this is one of those things that can provide you day one value by installing, configuring, and getting it set up within Reltio. And it's for use within the Salesforce ecosystem with things like Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, Viva, custom objects, and it is bi-directionally synchronizing data between Reltio and Salesforce. And most importantly, it has the search before create capability. So if you want to search for records in Reltio through Salesforce before creating something, you have that capability. And it can do things like basic transformations and other custom logic that you might want to build. So this is a first-class citizen. The way I would encourage you to think about Reltio Integration Hub is, let's say there's certain use cases or certain capabilities you want to do, for example, integrating to the financial services cloud or other applications within the Salesforce ecosystem. That's when Reltio Integration Hub can be considered, because it does give you that flexibility and you can build additional use cases and solve for additional problems. So it's supplemental, but Salesforce connector, it is a first-class citizen, it's not going away. You should still look at this when it comes to solving synchronization use cases between Reltio and Salesforce.
And maybe another data point on how are you, what investment, you said you were making investments, continuing. Can you give us a little view into the roadmap around the Salesforce capabilities?
Absolutely, yeah. So right now we're heavily at work with a comprehensive monitoring, logging, dashboarding feature for Salesforce. So what we've been hearing from our customers and the feedback is they want to see what's happening with the integrations aspects as merges are happening, as synchronization events are happening. The customers need to see, users need to see the detailed logging, insights into the data moving back and forth. So that is one of the examples of what's in our roadmap, and we're actively working on this at the moment, where it'll be within the user interface where you can actually see, you update a record, you create a record, what's actually happening, how long it's taking, are there errors, is something getting hung up? Can you retry that same event again if something did go sideways? So all of that monitoring visibility, we're including it to help with troubleshooting, with debugging. But then long-term, we're also actively working on continuous performance optimizations with scalability. I mentioned 40 billion calls in the last year, API calls. So the connector is being used heavily as well. So as more and more customers are using it, we're fine-tuning it, we're tweaking it, we're optimizing it, and really getting it ready for the next phase of it as more and more customers start using it. So those are the two big areas we're actively working on.
So quickly, I feel like Gene was set up for that. Like, you knew exactly what he was going to ask. It's kind of crazy.
No, actually, Salesforce is the #1 connector in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is a very important question. Yeah.
No, I agree. It was awesome. And then another question: for streaming data in and out of Reltio, is Kafka, Confluent supported?
Good question. That's actually a good segue into this. I was going to talk about this a little earlier. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, this one. So let me spend a little bit of time on this slide, because I know many of you have questions around this, and the Kafka question will come up. So I'll get to the Kafka question, but I do want to cover all of these different use cases and how you might think about using different products as these use cases become important and front and center for you. So let me go with the event streaming part, because the Kafka question did come up. So there's two aspects of Kafka. One is event streaming distribution integration within Reltio, so on the inbound side. So on the inbound side, you have three options. You could either look at message queues, you could look at Kafka or Reltio Integration Hub. If you're using some sort of a specific event queue, we have event queues out of the box, right? We have AWS SQS, we have Azure Message Bus, we have GCP Pub Sub. So there's message queues on the Reltio platform you could leverage. For Kafka integration, the best recommended path is to look at the Confluent connector, and Reltio Integration Hub does have a Confluent connector on it. And you could use a Lambda function to push-pull between Kafka topics and Reltio. So that would be the recommendation there. And with Reltio Integration Hub, there's additional custom integrations and optimizations you could do. And we do have one of our customers, their use case is to get all of this marketing lead information from various sources, whether it's Salesforce, marketing campaigns, homegrown systems. What they're doing is they're pushing all of that into a Kafka topic, and then using Reltio Integration Hub and the Confluent connector, they're pulling the Kafka topic for these messages, and then they're using that to update Reltio and create new records. And we do have a real live example of a customer using that. So that's definitely an option that you can use. Lambda function is obviously another way to do it, but that would be the recommended path for the Kafka integration specifically. Now, I know there's been questions around, okay, well, this is all great. You have Reltio Integration Hub. Should we also look at building a native Kafka integration in Reltio? And so we are actively looking at, do we need to do that or not? Because we do have Reltio Integration Hub. We do have these other ways to do it. So that is an answer that we will get back to our customers, to you on, whether or not that's in the roadmap. But that, regardless of where that falls in the roadmap, the solution right now is either a Lambda function or Reltio Integration Hub, whichever one suits your purpose. So that's the Kafka answer there.
Mark, since you asked the question, Mark Stons, we'd love to have maybe a few minutes of your time, just talk through your particular use case, understand performance requirements, volumes, latency needs, etc., so that we can get to the right decision making on our roadmap. But there's definitely capabilities that you can use right now.
Yeah, it's a great point. So yeah, go ahead, Ansh.
So there's a rich bunch of options here on this slide, but I don't know if you want to go through all of this detail here, or maybe I put you in the hot seat a little bit more.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's come back to that.
Okay. All right. So let's focus on the outbound side, right? It's like different ways of getting data out of Reltio, and especially I'm curious about the analytics use cases, right? So we have a Google connector, we have we offer out of the box now a Snowflake connector. Like, what does the outbound side look like? And give us a deeper dive into that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we talked a lot about inbound. On the outbound, we have a similar set of capabilities. And I will specifically touch on the analytics piece because that is where there are nuances that's worth unpacking. And so if you focus your attention on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see there's a variety of ways to get data out of Reltio. You have APIs, you have export service, you have event streaming. The connector section with the analytics connector specifically, those are purpose-built for analytics platforms, right? So you have Google BigQuery, you have Snowflake, and then upcoming would be Databricks Delta Lake. There's Redshift on AWS. So there's, depending on the cloud platform, there's all kinds of analytics platforms. So we have specific connectors for that. And then once again, Reltio Integration Hub, the kind of the one-stop shop for anything else that is not purpose-built that we are focused on at the moment. So at a high level, those are the various capabilities of getting data out of Reltio. Now, to answer your question, Ansh, more specifically on the analytics side, I'm going to switch over to this slide because we do have connectors today. If you've seen our Google BigQuery connector or Snowflake connector, we do have connectors out in the market today. But given the customer feedback, the user feedback, and what we're looking at from an analytics perspective, there's a lot more that we could do. So what you're seeing on the slide is all of the different ways we've enhanced our market offering and the version 2.0 of these connectors that we're building, and we are in the process of launching them in early access. So let me just go through these 4 different categories to clearly articulate what are the ways that we're enhancing these connectors. So first of all, on the data performance and delivery side, the existing connectors, there's an inherent lag in the data update. So whether it's GBQ or Snowflake, there's a few hours of lag. So it's not as near real time as our users would like. So that's the first update that we're making. So these new connectors are streaming, they're near real time, updates are processed on the fly. But then beyond that, there's also an inherent simplicity with what we're building with version 2.0. So tables are automatically generated. It's purpose-built for analytics use cases. So the data is flattened in the right way to make queries easier. And we're creating additional views in the table. So we're just simplifying the consumption of this data so that running analytics and data science jobs are that much easier. So the core theme here is simplicity, ease of use. That's what we're laser focused on. And then also the scaling aspect of it with Google BigQuery, for example, for today, it's in a fixed resource environment that we're transforming and making it automated in terms of scaling. So that's not something you have to necessarily be concerned or think about. So that's one aspect of it. On the data types aspect, Snowflake, for instance, was only limited to entities, relationships, interactions. We've expanded that to have all the data. So now there's matches, merges, interactions, relationships, all of the data in Reltio that would be useful to you. All of that now can be exported to Snowflake, and then you can run exactly the type of analytics that you want to run on that data. Then monitoring has been a big ask for our customers, being able to, same thing as Snowflake, right? It's a common theme, which is our customers just need more insight, more visibility. how things are performing, what's failing, what's successful, and specifically for troubleshooting, data logging, things like that. So with these new connectors, our goal from day one has been to make sure that there's enough adequate visibility into the logs and the data that's going through the system, and being able to pinpoint exactly where problems are happening and providing customers actionable insights so they can immediately address any issues they're running into. And then the last thing is around security. In the past, a lot of tickets have had to be submitted with our existing connectors for any sort of security updates, user role access permission controls, changes, adding new users in Google BigQuery, for example. All of that, we're giving the control over to you, over to our user, so they can configure access controls themselves and have additional control over data sets. So security has been of paramount concern, whether it's Snowflake or GBQ. So we've addressed this with the new version of the products, the 2.0. So as these get launched into the market and as you get your hands on it, you'll be able to clearly see all of these updates and enhancements that we've made. But we're not stopping at Snowflake and Google BigQuery. There's more coming. For instance, on the roadmap, we have Databricks Delta Lake that's coming. And we're also looking at Azure connectors into Azure analytics platforms, Redshift, and so on. So the analytics specific use case is something we're looking at very deeply and closely. So we have a roadmap laid out for that. So
yeah, I mean, and thematically, it seems like, what we're solving for is that real-time analytics capability, first of all, and secondly, observability end-to-end, because we know that all of you, our customers, you and your practitioners, you want end-to-end observability into your data pipeline, and the MDM piece, although a very important piece of that data pipeline, you want to be able to observe every interaction between systems as well. So you'll see us standardize on some of these capabilities, regardless of which component you use for data transfer. You'll be able to check for status of different jobs or sort of other fault information pretty in a pretty straightforward manner. I did want to ask also about the third leg of this stool, Ian, which is, you've talked about inbound, you've talked about outbound, right? Outbound focused a little bit on analytics, but what about data that's in Reltio, right? There's a lot of change, improvement, enrichment capabilities that we can provide, both out of the box and extensible, that really add to that data value. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, data enrichment is one of the top use cases for our customers. They have data already within their enterprise. It's in Reltio. Now the question becomes, especially if it's organization, company data, vendor data, supplier data, how do they enrich it in an easy, simple way? And so we have, I'm going to move over to that slide. Yeah, these purpose-built specific data enrichment connectors. So, the reason we have these purpose-built connectors is it's driven by market demand and customer need, right? So many of our customers want Dun & Bradstreet data in their system. So as opposed to saying, go connect to that API, use Reltio Integration Hub, which you absolutely could do, we have these connectors for a reason, and that's to make it simple and easy to enrich data with these common data sources. So Dun & Bradstreet, virtually every organization on the planet uses Dun & Bradstreet data to some extent, has in-depth firmographic information, financials, industry, historical company profile data. There's all kinds of data that Dun & Bradstreet, even Bureau van Dijk have, and they have armies of people and technology to get all that data and curate it and provide them to organizations to enrich their data. So we've made it easy to get that data from these companies and get it into Reltio. So, and these companies like Dun & Bradstreet, Bureau van Dijk, they have information on 400, 500 million organizations around the world. And so all of this data is now, this trusted, accurate data is now available within Reltio through these connectors. And so what the connectors do is I have a couple of screenshots here. They're built into the user interface. So once you turn these integrations on, you can match whatever data is in Reltio to these in a real-time or scheduled job. So for Dun & Bradstreet data, match it to what's in the database of D&B, get that DUNS number, which is their unique identifier, get that additional company profile data back, get it back into Reltio as records need to be populated with that information. You can enrich all of that data with however many attributes. Like Dun & Bradstreet, for example, has a couple hundred attributes on any specific organization. You can get all of that within Reltio and enrich your records. And then you can build also corporate hierarchies. So if you think about a company like Apple, has probably 10,000 different subsidiaries across the world. They have headquarters, they have retail stores across the world. They have all kinds of establishments. Being able to build that family tree, that corporate hierarchy of all these different organizations connected to the same headquarters, which is based in California, and visualizing that connection and doing all of that within Reltio, that you can do using these connectors and getting all of that enriched corporate hierarchy information back into Reltio. And then this last bullet point, which I mentioned, real-time or scheduled jobs, that flexibility is built in for you. So that's how these purpose-built connectors are. But let's say you have another data source, inside view, Zoom info, Experian, whatever you're looking at. That's when Reltio Integration Hub can be of use, because just as we talked about previously, you can use either out-of-the-box pre-built connectors, or you can build a connector using an SDK and create your workflow to real-time update records, enrich records. So that flexibility is always there with the Integration Hub to supplement anything that we might not offer out of the box.
Any cool examples of that you want to share?
What I can do is just give you a quick insight into the product itself, their Integration Hub.
Sure.
And I'll just take a couple minutes to go through this. I've done other sessions on Integration Hubs. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but within the Reltio product, for instance, if you go into the top right, you'll see Integration Hub as an icon that shows up. So once you click on it, it takes you into this low-code, no-code dashboard, or this interface if you haven't seen the previous webinars or videos before. And in here is where this community library, this is the most powerful aspect of it, because this is where you have pre-built connectors into so many different applications, different data providers, data sources. And whatever you want to pick from here, I'm just going to use an example like HubSpot. You have pre-built recipes that are here. You have connectors. And even on the Reltio side, we've built a bunch of pre-built recipes. And this is something that's continually being added. So if you want to get data from an S3 file, there's already a templated recipe that you can choose. And a recipe is a workflow. That's all it means. And so you can use this recipe, just click use this recipe and start integrating. And so we've seen so many customers do really interesting things with this. They've built enrichment connectors, they've built application and integration connectors. And one of the most interesting examples I can talk about is going out to the US Census government website and building a connector to that data to get census data from the US Census government directly, because they have publicly available APIs. So building a connector to that API, getting that census information from the US government, integrating, enriching data within Reltio using a recipe like what you see here, that's something that you can do and has been done, it's proven. And so that's just one example of an enrichment. So that's the beauty of this, is the flexibility and agility that you have in terms of connecting to anything and everything and enriching your data within Reltio.
And there's a question here from Abhijit, and it goes back to the previous previous section where we're talking about the DNB connector. And he's asking, while using the DNB connector for data enrichment, is there any task that needs to be done on the DNB side?
No, the connector, the way it operates is it leverages DNB APIs behind the scenes. So as long as you have a contract with DNB, you have license to the information that they have. All you would need is your subscription information, your API keys. You can enter that into the connector and be up and running after that.
That's great. I want to take a pause here where, we have about 19 minutes to go. And I'd love for the community to come up with more questions, feedback on the topics that we've talked about, and, direction really on where you would, where you see areas where we could improve in any of these capabilities, right? Inbound, outbound integrations or enrichment capabilities. Would love to have a dialogue around that. Feel free to type your question in or come off of mute and ask.
So do we expect any webhooks coming into our picture, like an event-based trigger or webhooks, what type of things?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah. What I was going to say is we are evaluating the need for it. We don't have a plan just yet, but we will maybe in a separate session try to understand what you're looking for, because even though we don't have that capability today, Reltio Integration Hub could be a potential path forward. But just like the Kafka integration, we'd love to understand more of what you're trying to accomplish to see, how we might be able to fit it into our roadmap long term.
Especially, Chetan, the competing interests there are queues versus hooks, right? A lot of integrations that would have used, webhooks for callback type of integrations, we're seeing queues being used for more and more of those sort of event-based integrations.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see those two sort of competing models?
Because the main reason the webhooks, I just bought it, like I came across in one of the use case, like the start event has to be started when we are having a webhook kind of a trigger. So the queues has a better performance, and also the schedulers. So the also the Reltio's workflow having a message type of event, get an event started. Everything is wonderful, extraordinary, but taking a step back into the one of the traditional approaches or something where people are still using something called expecting something on webhooks.
Right.
So that's the reason I just
from an integration point of view, if an external system is expecting a webhook, then that use case makes sense. Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chetan. That's a great insight. A couple more questions are coming in. This is great. Ian, SAP. How can we do bi-directional integration with SAP?
Great question. The easy answer there is Reltio Integration Hub. In fact, we are working with a customer at the moment to integrate into SAP S/4HANA. And the idea there is, I showed you just a second ago, the pre-built recipes. So what's going to happen is as we build recipes to SAP or NetSuite or Workday, there's recipes we can publish in our community, not the Chris Detzel community, but in the Reltio Integration Hub recipe library. That way you can, once we finish up the SAP integration, you can use those recipes and be able to integrate with SAP directly. So the idea there is we would create a generic templated version of it. So for your custom use case, you would take something that you can already get out of the box and then be able to use it for your own integration purposes. So that's generally how we're thinking of, you talked about SAP, but I mentioned a couple other examples, NetSuite and Workday. Reltio Integration Hub does offer us a really flexible way to start building integrations to all these applications.
The app-to-app use cases is pretty well
Exactly.
established. Yeah. Oh, follow-up question. Is this SAP integration that you're working on, Ian, is that going to be real time, or are we going to pick up things like once every 5 hours?
No, and that's the beauty of Reltio Integration Hub, is the ability to do real-time or near real-time use cases. So that would be the goal.
One more super interesting question. Can we use Integration Hub to replace SQS and REST-based API integration to get data out of Reltio?
No, it's not replacing any of those capabilities. Those are core capabilities that are core to the platform. The way to think about Reltio Integration Hub is it's simplifying and abstracting away the complexity. So instead of writing thousands of lines of code to integrate to queues or APIs, this is drag and drop, point and click. So instead of taking months or even years to develop solutions, this can be hours or days.
Yeah, and I think the way I think about that is the next best option, right? Out of the box connectors, they're designed by us, they're optimized to work with Reltio. They do the things that they do are clearly articulated, and they do those things well, right? Now, data is all about flexibility, and so the integration hub is, think of it as this capability that is always integrated on one side with Reltio, whether data is coming in or going out or getting enriched, whatever it is. But the integration on the Reltio side is already done. What is on the other side is really up to your creativity. What you want to connect the other side to. So and in the absence of such a facility, what somebody would have to do is to write a program, essentially, right, against the API or use our SDK. And so this just lowers the amount of work or the barrier to getting that integration successful and thriving. And really the maintainability over time is significantly higher. That's sort of the sweet spot for Integration Hub from my point of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
More questions. When can we expect the recipe for SAP and NetSuite?
Yeah, great question. We are working with these customers as we speak. Let us get back to you on that. It's hard to give a timeline just yet because we're actively working with them to build scenarios out.
Let me flip that around though, and Abhijit, could we work with you on these recipes as well? Right? Could we share in real time what we're doing and understand your use case, and perhaps that would help us make this even more usable for the community at large?
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll get back.
Yeah,
to you.
and actually that brings up a good point, Ansh. I'm glad you brought that up. So what we're working on doing at the moment with Chris Stetzel help is build a Reltio Integration Hub specific community where we will be sharing best practices. You are more than welcome to jump on there, talk to our customer base and Reltio partners. So talk about best practices, talk about SAP integration, NetSuite, and also share recipes. So, and that's one of the big kind of key powers of Integration Hub is the aspect of community and being able to leverage each other's learnings. And you saw that built within the product, but why don't we do that also on Reltio community as well?
And there's a request from Wiswa for a video. Is there a video available to integrate S/4HANA connector using RAH or bidirectional data movement and the common use cases supported?
We don't have a video on it just yet because we are actively working on building the solution, but it's a great idea though. So once we have a set of recipes and use cases we're solving, we'll create videos. And actually, Chris mentioned this at the beginning of the session. We have videos or webinars, community webinars that are coming up on various ways to build Reltio Integration Hub recipes and solutions. So there's a whole series of sessions we'll do around that. And then simultaneously, we'll put up videos on YouTube as well.
Will you be cooking on?
Yeah, the plan is to cook and using real food. So
awesome. Question time for what? Sorry, was it someone about to speak?
Yeah, this is Chetan, yeah.
Yes.
So in this session, I just saw like we have something new and enhanced connectors for analytics, where I see like for the connector 1.2 to 2.2 for the data performance, for the Snowflake one, we have actually overcome the 2 or 4 hours lag that was previously happening. So as far as my understanding goes, like before exporting a data is what the connector internally also does. But export, what it does is it applies filters on the primary storage and gets whatever we require. That's the reason the time was taking a pretty quick. But Snowflake connector used to bring the whole dump and add filters to it to have it refresh between the databases. Does it mean like for the connector 2.0, it says like updates processed will be on fly? So like, can we expect something faster than export, or does it take equal to export?
No, it is on the fly, right? So it's near real time. So as data, it's just using streaming, right? So as data gets updated, created, changed, it'll show up in Snowflake in a near real time manner.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. And by the way, timeline for Snowflake connector, it sounds like you're interested, Chetan. Early access will be next month. So we would love to work with you and have you be one of our partners there if you have interest.
Yeah, definitely. I do have an interest and I'll be happy to part of it.
Perfect.
Looking forward for some invite or a link to join in that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will reach out to you.
Thank you.
We probably have time for one more question. Gene is asking, I haven't spent a lot of time on RIH, but are we allowed to create our own custom connector, like a customizable SQS RIH connector?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a connector SDK that's available, and we can share the documentation with you. And so custom connectors to, yeah, SQS, RH, anything you want to, you can create a custom connector too.
Oh, I have to take this last one. There's one more from Abhijit. The video of how to use the SFDC connector shows the happy path only. In case SFDC data model is a bit complex or not one-on-one with Reltio data model, how will the complexity be handled?
Yeah, great question. So, early on, I talked about our SFDC roadmap, where we are focused on monitoring and performance optimization. This is the piece that's up next, is further simplification on the connector. Abhijit, you're right. We have showcased the simpler use case and the easy way to integrate, but we all understand customizations on the Salesforce side, custom data models, and there are ways we can simplify it. So that is a roadmap activity like we'll do. And the other thing to call out there as well is for data models that don't fit into what the SFDC connector does. Reltio Integration Hub has proven to be really successful in integrating with the custom objects or various variations on the data model, including custom logic and transformation. So that's a way to supplement what the SFDC connector does.
Excellent. I do want to lean forward a little bit and sort of get into like the things that you think about and when you're relaxing, because I'm pretty sure you think about data getting into or out of Reltio in that relaxed state as well.
Yeah.
So as you think about like the future of loading data, right, and not making any claims about timeline, but generally, how do you think about making it even easier for our customers to get data into the system? What's the future there?
I'm happy you brought that point up, because there are obviously lots of enhancements and optimizations we can do. Data loader is a great example. So although we have a slick user interface and simple ways to load data, we fully understand there's further optimizations that we can do to take all of the thinking and take away the cognitive load of trying to do a lot of stuff yourself. So to the extent possible with machine learning, which is a huge area that we're investing in. So we have a whole machine learning team that is actively enhancing capabilities there. There's ways to use that to automate much more of the data loading process to where you don't have to do a bunch of data prep beforehand, a bunch of formatting, transformation of the file on your side. We want to take that on, and we want to simplify, automate it, use machine learning, and also simplify the user interaction on the interface. Make it more effortless, make it more intuitive. So simplicity is the name of the game. Heavily focused as an organization on time to value. I mentioned day one value, even day zero value. And on the data load side, there's numerous enhancements that we can do. So lots more to come on that front. Actively working on it, looking at it. And also, by the way, this is a great chance to get some feedback. We'd love to also do some maybe user research session with you as well. If any of you are interested, so that can feed into our roadmap so we can know exactly what are the different ways we can make this experience as seamless for you as possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Ann. I think that's what we have time for, folks. I just do want to thank you so much for taking the time and joining us for this conversation. We only improve if you give us active feedback, tell us where you want us to take some of these conversations that are rooted in product, and also, broadly speaking, the conversations we're having in our community, and the direction that you want us to take those in. With that, Chris, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Thanks to Anch and Ian. That was really, really informative and really good. So thank you guys for coming. So we do have a show coming out. We have 2 shows coming out next week. Check them out. RSVP today. This show has been recorded and will be shared out for sure by Monday. And so feel free to push your comments in the chat quickly to see, if you liked it or if you have some quick thoughts around, what Ansh mentioned. Is there some things that you do want to cover? And the last thing I'll say, and I'm going to always say this, is we are always looking for volunteers to speak around the space of master data management and or the product. If you want to go deep and share your story, please email me directly, and I'll make sure that happens.